You remember the exact number, not the day you got your first paycheck, not the day you paid off your credit card, but the day your bank account had a comma in it for the first time. Maybe it was $1,200. Maybe it was $3,400. Didn't matter. There was a comma and you just stared at it. Probably refreshed the app twice to make sure it was real. And then something weird happened. You got scared, not excited, not relieved, scared, like the money was borrowed, like someone was about to call and ask for it back, like you didn't actually deserve to have it just sitting there quietly, doing nothing while you went about your Tuesday like a person who had options. That fear, that's not random. That's not you being broken. That is the single most important psychological signal your brain will ever send you about money. And almost nobody talks about what it actually means. Because here's the thing they don't tell you at the beginning of every financial advice video. The thing buried under the budgeting spreadsheets and the Roth IRA tutorials. Your first $10,000 isn't a money problem, it's an identity problem. And until you understand that, you can follow every rule perfectly and still end up back at zero. Not because you're irresponsible, because you don't actually believe deep in the part of your brain that makes decisions at 11 p.m. when you're tired and your friend just texted you about a trip to Nashville, that you're someone who keeps money. Let me explain what I mean. And I'm going to do it the hard way because that's the only way it actually lands. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the scarcity mindset. You've probably heard of it, maybe nodded along to it, maybe even shared the tweet. But the version most people know is incomplete, and the incomplete version is almost useless. Here's the part people skip. Scarcity doesn't just change what you do with money, it changes what you think you are. When you've been broke long enough, not temporarily broke, not waiting on a check broke, but genuinely chronically, do I buy groceries or put gas in the car? Broke. Your brain starts to encode that as identity, not circumstance. It stops reading poverty as the situation you're in and starts reading it as a kind of person you are. Elder Shafir and Sendel Melanathan spent years studying this. They called it tunneling. When your mind is consumed by not having enough, it literally narrows. Your cognitive bandwidth, the mental capacity you have for planning, for impulse control, for thinking about next month, it gets hijacked by right now. Buy this bill, buy this overdraft, buy this choice between two bad options. And here's what nobody says out loud. That tunnel doesn't disappear the day you hit $10,000. It doesn't even disappear the day you hit $50,000 because it was never about the number. It got baked into how you see yourself. It became your financial personality before you even knew that was a thing. So when the money shows up, when you finally have a cushion, finally have breathing room, finally have that comma, your brain doesn't automatically switch modes. It panics. It looks around for the emergency. It finds one, or it creates one. Because abundance doesn't feel normal. Abundance feels like a mistake, waiting to be corrected. I want you to think about someone, maybe you, maybe someone you know, who got a tax refund of $2,000, maybe the biggest single deposit they'd seen in years. And within 6 weeks, it was gone. Not on one big stupid thing, gone on 100 small things that each made complete sense in the moment. A car repair that needed doing, catching up on a bill, a dinner out because, God, they'd been stressed. New shoes because the old ones were actually embarrassing, a loan to a sibling who really needed it. Every single one of those decisions was reasonable. That's the trap. You look back and there's no villain. There's no one stupid purchase you can point to and fix next time. There's just a pattern, a gravitational pull back to zero, like the money never had a chance to stay. Psychologists call this returning to the mean, but in personal finance, it shows up as something more specific. Researchers have actually studied lottery winners, tax rebate recipients, and people who receive unexpected windfalls. The data is uncomfortable. Within 2 years, most people's financial picture looks almost identical to what it was before the money. Not because they're stupid, because the behavior changed temporarily, but the identity didn't change at all. And here's where most financial advice gets it completely backwards. They say, change your habits, track your spending, automate your savings, stop buying coffee, stop eating out, cut the subscription you forgot about. All of that is fine. None of that is wrong, but it treats the symptom. It gives you a set of rules to follow while your subconscious is still quietly, persistently operating from the belief that you are not someone who holds on to money. And rules without identity, rules without actually believing a different story about yourself, they last maybe 3 weeks, maybe until the next stressor, maybe until the next group chat about Vegas. The first $10,000 isn't about the $10,000. It's about becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with $10,000. And that's a fundamentally different project. Here's the specific thing I didn't understand until I was deep enough in it to feel stupid about it. I thought saving money was about discipline, about willpower, about being the kind of stoic, boring, responsible adult who says no to things other people say yes to. And I hated that framing because it made money feel like punishment, like the reward for being good with money was a smaller life, less fun, less spontaneity, less being a person your friends actually want to hang out with. So I did what a lot of people do. I rejected the whole thing, unconsciously, but completely. Because if the only way to be good with money was to become someone I didn't want to be, then I'd just rather not think about it too hard. That's the intellectual betrayal I promised you at the beginning. The thing you thought this was going to be, a video about discipline, about cutting back, about building better habits. That's not what this is. Because discipline applied to a broken identity just makes you miserable and broke instead of just broke. The work isn't adding more rules. The work is changing who you think you are. And the moment that clicked for me, genuinely clicked, not, oh, interesting clicked, but kept me up at night clicked, was when I realized that every single financial decision I made was downstream of one quiet, never spoken belief I had about myself. I believed I was someone who got by, not someone who built, not someone who grew, someone who got by. And getting by has a ceiling. Getting by doesn't save money because saving money isn't getting by. Saving money is preparing for a future you actually think you deserve to have. And I didn't think that. Not really. Not in the place where the decisions actually get made. Approximately 1,500 words. So, what does changing that actually look like? Because this is the part where most videos go theoretical, and you leave feeling vaguely inspired, and then your car makes a noise on the highway, and the whole thing evaporates. Let's get specific. Grocery store level specific. You're at Publix or Kroger or wherever you are, and you're standing in the cereal aisle. There are two boxes. The one you actually want is $5.49. The off-brand is $3.29. And you stand there longer than you should, doing math in your head. And you put the off-brand in the cart, fine. That's fine. That can be a rational decision. But here's the question underneath the decision. Why are you making it? Are you making it because you've looked at your numbers this month? and you've decided that the $2.20 meaningfully serves a goal you're moving toward? Or are you making it because somewhere in your chest there's a vague, formless anxiety that says you can't afford the thing you actually want, even though this month you could? Are you making the decision from strategy or from scarcity? Because they look identical from the outside, they feel completely different from the inside. And over time, one of them builds something and one of them erodes you. This isn't about the cereal. It's about developing the ability to tell the difference between a choice made from power and a choice made from fear. Because until you can feel that distinction, until it becomes something you can actually identify in real time, you're going to keep making financial decisions on autopilot, running old programming in a new situation. Let's talk about the job offer scenario, because this is where identity quietly costs people the most. Someone you know or you gets offered a new job. It pays $12,000 more a year, but it requires negotiating, just asking for $5,000 more on top of that. And they don't. You don't, because it feels greedy. Because what if they take the offer back? Because you're just grateful to be chosen, because you've never in your life walked into a room and said, I'm worth more than that, and had it land as truth rather than delusion. That's not a negotiation skill problem. That's an identity problem. That's someone operating from a self concept that says, I don't get to ask for more. And that single moment played out across a career, across every raise conversation, every contract, every rate you set as a freelancer. That moment is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, not metaphorically, literally, mathematically, hundreds of thousands of dollars, lost not to bad spending, not to bad investments, but to a story about who you are that you inherited from somewhere and never questioned. The people who build wealth, and I don't mean the people who were handed it, I mean the people who actually built it from something close to zero. They're not smarter. They're not more disciplined. They just, at some point, updated the story. They stopped asking, can I afford this, as their primary financial question, and started asking, what am I building and does this serve it? The question itself is different. The identity behind the question is different. Now, the obvious objection, the one you're sitting with right now. This sounds like a mindset thing. And mindset stuff is what people say when they don't have real solutions. I don't need a new identity. I need more money. I need my rent to be lower. I need my income to actually cover my life. You're telling someone drowning to think more positively about the water. Yeah, I hear that. And you're not wrong that structural problems are real. You're not wrong that wages haven't kept up and costs have. You're not wrong that some people are dealing with situations where the margins are so tight that no amount of identity work changes the math. But I'd ask you to look at something honestly. Is that fully your situation? Or is there some gap? Not a giant one, maybe a small one between what you earn and what you keep. Because if there's any gap at all, then the question of why that gap exists and why it keeps existing is worth sitting with. And for most people, not all people, but most people, the honest answer has something to do with the identity piece, with the spending that happens when you're stressed, with the opportunities that don't get taken because they require you to believe you're worth taking them, with the financial decisions made from the old self, the one that was just trying to get by. Even when the circumstances have technically changed, the structural problems are real. And this is also real. Both things are true at the same time. Here's what the identity shift actually feels like practically on the ground. It doesn't feel like confidence. It doesn't feel like suddenly believing you're a millionaire. It feels quieter than that. It feels like sitting with money in your account and not immediately thinking, I should do something with this before it disappears. It feels like declining a purchase, not from anxiety, but from genuine disinterest because it doesn't fit where you're going. It feels like looking at your bank account on a random Wednesday, not because you're scared of what's there, but just to check in, like someone who's comfortable in their own home. It feels like, and this is the one that took me a long time to articulate, it feels like the future is a real place, not a vague, maybe one day abstraction, an actual place you're moving toward, a place that has real things in it that you're working on. And that shift from the future as a dream to the future as a destination is what changes the math. Because people who have a real destination make different decisions at the grocery store. They make different decisions at the job negotiation. They make different decisions when their friend texts about Nashville, not because they are more virtuous, because the decision has a context it didn't have before. It has a why that's stronger than the pull, the $10,000 or whatever your version of it is not a finish line. It's not even really a milestone. It's more like a mirror. It shows you clearly and without mercy what you actually believe about yourself. Because if you hit $10,000 and you feel dread, there's something to look at there. If you hit it and you immediately want to spend it on something that has nothing to do with anything you actually care about long term, there's something to look at there. If you hit it and then quietly, almost invisibly, you find your way back to zero over the next 4 months, there is something to look at there. The number isn't the goal. The number is the diagnostic. It tells you whether the identity work has happened or whether you're still running the old operating system in a new situation. And the only way to do the identity work is to actually do the identity work. To sit down, not with a budgeting app, but with a blank page and answer the question, who is the person I'm becoming? What does that person believe about money? What does that person say when the gap between the two options is $2.20? What does that person do when a real opportunity requires asking for more than feels comfortable? Because you can track every dollar and automate every transfer and read every book. And if the identity underneath all of it still says, I'm someone who gets by, the money will keep finding its way back to zero. The first $10,000 is waiting for you to decide who you are. One thing before you close this tab, write down the last 3 financial decisions you made that you still feel bad about. Don't judge them, just look at them. And next to each one, write one word that describes the feeling that drove the decision: stress, fear, guilt, boredom, shame. That word, that's your real budget category. That's where the work starts.